Hello and welcome to the week ahead. Kind of like the last weekend how I just did a quick review of the chart and left it at that. And I feel like that is what is required again, so I'm going to do it. But this time I'm going to do it a little different where I do a time frame drill down. So this is something that I do every single morning before the market opens on NQ and on ES. And I also do it on any specific stocks that I'm particularly interested in trading. The purpose of this drill down is really just to go through the motions of making sure that I understand on each different time frame what is happening and what is the most likely scenario of what should happen next. So this is NQ on the monthly time frame. As you can see, we've got this bottom that was set here, a top that was set there, and we're scouting a higher low. And I know we're scouting a higher low because this month here of November didn't set a fresh high above the prior month of October. It was lower, and we broke the low of October here. So coming back in. And I look at this blue line here, which is the monthly EMA 12, and that is the MA that I use, and it is my guide for what's going on. You can see that it's actually been pretty good, like as a what I call an EMA rider, where monthly touched it here, held, came down, didn't get to it here, bounced, and then did get to it here, and this low also tested this low from back here. So that was a nice little double bottom that we had before, a nice solid rally off of that. Here it broke it. This was the tariff bottom, or the tariff shakeout, I guess you could say. And then we recovered completely from that, and we've been up over top of the EMA ever since. And so this little test here is not the best dip, in my opinion. I think we could come in and test it again, but maybe that's not going to happen. You know, maybe it's going to do what it did back here, where it set this low, went way high up from there, and then came back and tested that low again and the EMA 12, and then continued up. I could see that happening and being totally healthy. And this is why in a previous weekend video, I put in a lot of talk about scouting a monthly higher low, because I thought when this low broke that we might actually be coming in to test that monthly EMA 12, and that obviously didn't happen. We rallied out of that over the Thanksgiving break. It doesn't mean that TA is wrong. It just means that the most likely scenario that I was looking for didn't play out, and that's just how it goes sometimes. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to get a monthly higher low. I'm still looking for one, and it will come at some point. Is it going to be December? Maybe, maybe not. Is it going to be January, February? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But I'm pretty sure it's coming at some point. But I look at this here, and I think to myself, okay, if this low right here that was set in November is a monthly higher low and it's going to hold, that's entirely possible. We could just be a tightening range in here. So when I leave this time frame and I go down to look at the next time frame down, which is the weekly time frame, it's top of mind to me that we don't have to, break this low again. We could just stay somewhere up here. So let's go look at the weekly time frame. Here's that low that was set. So we had on the weekly time frame, we had this nice move up. So here was a higher low, higher high, and then a lower low on the weekly. So we broke that low, but then we rallied up out of that to here, right? And so that is actually a much bigger retracement than I wanted to see personally, because I was looking for it to keep coming, to bounce a little bit and then come lower and test that EMA, which was somewhere down here, right? And so this is a much bigger retracement than I was betting on. And let's take a look at exactly how big a retracement it was. It was way above the 618. This is, goodness gracious, that's it's got to be 80-ish% of a retracement, but it is a weekly lower high. Now, because it's so high, it means that we most likely will get a tightening range from here. I did have Charting Man Dan from the Chart Guys let me know that, because he watched my video last weekend and responded, thank you, Dan, that it's with the indexes, because they tend to, have these ongoing continuous moves. If you get a retracement of that size, on a regular stock, he'd think yes, equilibrium. On an index like NQ or on ES, he thinks it's more likely that it actually, the odds of it going back to all-time high, or at least back to this high that it was at before, would be much higher. And so that's good information for me to sort of bake in and share with you, because I was just thinking that every different stock symbol is the same in this regard, but no, with the indexes and the way that they're managed and the way that they're composed, there's actually a good likelihood that the continuous move could force it up. So either way, what we got so far with the break of last week's low is a higher or lower high set, and so now we're scouting a higher low. And so that's what I came into today, realizing what was on deck. So we go into the daily time frame now, and this was really interesting, I thought. So what do you got here? 1, 2, 3, 4. We got a quadruple top here, and then a pretty sharp drop here on Friday. Especially given that, look how wicky this has been. Look at the bodies and the wicks on these candles. It's just a lot of choppy action over the last few days. And you can even see down here, the dots here are the average volume And you can see the volume on these days has been lower than average. And today, on the down day, was the first time we had a relatively higher volume. Throughout the day, I think QQQ got up to like 1.5 RVol or something like that. So a little more aggressive on the downside today. Either way, I thought this was really interesting. But again, I still look at this and I'm just like, well, we're scouting a higher low. I know we've made plenty of room to be able to come back in here. We tested the 382 today, which is a nice spot. But I look at this and where do I want to get involved? Well, if it's going to be a weekly higher low, I look at the weekly time frame and I mark off my weekly EMA 12 here, right there, and then I go back down to the daily. And that would be a pretty nice spot, and that would be 50% retracement of the whole move, a little bit above it. And also, when I'm looking for a weekly higher low, I look for the 4-hour RSI to get oversold. So let me put that on here as well. 4-hour oversold. What is that? Where is that? There it is. It's right there at the exact same spot as the weekly EMA 12. Wouldn't you know it? So, I look at this and I'm like, well, this would be a pretty sweet spot to get long. And that's what I was looking for today when we got this crazy flush. And what I was hoping for today was that we would continue to flush into that spot and we would get a V shape out of there and for the weekly higher low. But alas, I look at the weekly time frame and we barely broke this low from prior week. So if it was a weekly higher low, it wasn't that deep. And so I do think it would have been much nicer if we'd been able to come back into this level or lower and then bounce from there. Instead, we had a bounce today, but it was kind of a weak one. So let me get back down. So daily time frame, weekly higher low, or daily higher low expected, which because we didn't really set a higher low on the way up here. So still daily higher low and weekly higher low on deck. And then I go to the 4-hour, and this is such an interesting chart to me. So look at these tops. Like even I was playing it this day on Thursday when we had this test of the highs on Wednesday, and then we started coming down on Thursday and set, as we were coming down sharply, I was like, oh wow, here we go, we're looking for the weekly higher low. Now we're looking for a daily higher low, maybe a weekly higher low. And then when we got the bounce, I was expecting a lower high, but look how far it rallied all the way back up to the top. And then what happens on the Friday? We open lower and roll right over. So this is really difficult trading, and I guarantee people were shaken out in both directions. It's just, you get everybody on one side of the boat, and then what does the market do? It turns it around and makes all those people wrong today. So I feel bad for anybody who is suffering today, but luckily I was not one of them. And so I was already scouting for a daily higher low or a weekly higher low and hoping we were going to get it, but I was aware as we got down to the lower time frames here that the way the move was shaping up here as we were rolling over, it didn't feel that aggressive. When we finally did roll over, it got a little more aggressive. At the 15. Yeah, we weren't a 15 rider, we were a 5-minute rider, I think. Yeah. So you can see the volume. This is the open. We had a little bit of balance and then started the rollover. But it wasn't a hard, fast, straight drop, which meant to me that we were probably not going to V-shape out of this unless it just kept going and going and going and going and going and got more aggressive as it went. And that didn't happen. It did get a little more aggressive. You can see the volume got aggressive on this subsequent drop here. But it was down here. We rejected the 5-minute EMA 12 here again, and then I was down here on the 2-minute time frame, right? And let me just I'll change this to the 5-minute EMA 12 because I knew we were riding the 5-minute EMA 12 down. There it is. So broke below it, tested it, rejected, tested it, rejected, tested it, rejected. Maybe not a test. I mean, it's pretty close. But as we were setting this low here, this ultimately became the low right here. I was just aware that it wasn't aggressive enough. All of this chop that we were getting in here meant we were probably going to get a bounce. And I thought, there is a chance if the bulls really show up, because we have been getting a lot of wicks on all these daily candles, there is a chance that we could just bounce from here. So when I saw this candle here form and then us breaking above it, I got long right there. Boop. And my stop was under low of day here. And then I rode this out, which was actually a really good trade. But weakness into the close, right? This rally didn't continue here on the QQQ. It did just roll over. And so this just telling me that either it's going to do what it has been doing lately and just chop us around a bit, or there's still more downside ahead, getting us down to this spot I called out here, where this is that area, that zone where you get 4-hour oversold, weekly higher low, and maybe a long from somewhere in there. but it could go deeper. There's no telling how far and deep it can go. All you can do is play the price action and the most likely scenario, which is a weekly higher low and possibly tightening range into the coming weeks. Wow, 12 minutes just on that. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to go quite so deep, but it is worth talking about ES. Let's jump out to ES. So here is the monthly chart on ES. And this one's really notable because, when QQQ was setting that potential monthly higher low, look how ES behaved. It did break the low of prior month, but almost nothing. I'd say I'd almost be willing to call it an unbroken stair step because it was just ever so slightly below and then this hard rally out of it. So really not showing the same weakness that Qs are showing. And even then, I don't consider the Qs to be super weak, just that these are relatively stronger than the QQQ. Or the NASDAQ, I guess you could call it. Because I'm looking at futures, not QQQ. So let's go to weekly. This tells me I still don't consider this to even be a stair-step break. This is still just bullish action. And so still uptrend. No higher low scouted yet. So that's kind of a big deal when you think about it. Like looking for a higher low in QQQ, but not necessarily on ES. Okay, well, let's take a look at the weekly. So here was that low that was violated here, but barely, and we completely bounced out of it. Look at the weakness today on ES compared to, sorry, this is not the daily, this is the weekly. But you can even see on this weekly chart, it's barely moved, right? This is still way up at highs. Again, I'm just going to jump out to NQ really quick so you can see. Look how much further this came down. It's just much weaker. And even had a decent bounce here. Let's look at the daily time frame. On the bounce here, it is much closer to these all-time highs than NQ. And now this retracement, this is a megaphone pattern we're looking at here, which I'm not big on megaphones, but this is basically an indecision pattern, right? It's saying that people aren't sure, is it going to go up or is it going to go down? There's two types of indecision patterns. One is a tightening range like this that then breaks to the upside or the downside, and then the other is the megaphone, which is no, we're going lower, no, we're going higher, no, we're going lower, no, we're going higher, and they keep proving the other side wrong over and over again until finally one side wins, which typically, if it's going to go to the upside, it goes like this. That's how, at least the ones that I've seen, that's typically how it ends up playing out, that you're fighting, and then when they reject again, they finally get one side, in this case upside, tends to be proven right. So at this point, we don't know which way this is ultimately going to go. But I look at this on the daily time frame here, and this just looks like if I'm looking at any stock other than an index, typically if I see a pattern like this, what I end up doing is I'm like, oh look, it's a range. And so what I end up doing is drawing some boxes to help me understand where's the top and bottom of this range, and I look for, like, here there's a pivot low that's touched here, touched there, and then I go to the lowest point there, and then I stretch it out, and I'm like, that's the bottom of the range. Let's go to do the next one. Here is the highest point in the range. Here's a pivot point there, and I look at this as there's the top of the range. So now this to me is just the S&P 500 trading in a range, and I don't know which way it's going to go. I think if we're looking at this from the same perspective as NQ, then go to the monthly. At some point, we're going to get a monthly higher low, and maybe it's soon. Let's just mark off that level, just so we see where it is. Okay, this is the monthly EMA 12. Let's go to the weekly. Mark off where the weekly is. Weekly EMA 12. And then let's go back to the daily. Have a look. So that's so funny. The weekly EMA 12 is smack right in the middle of this range. The monthly EMA 12, which is underneath us and continuing to come up, is lower. So that's interesting. It makes me wonder if the monthly EMA 12 is going to carry on up and we're going to test it at the bottom of this range and then have that be the rally spot. Because I could absolutely see this just being range bound until it finally breaks the upside. But it's a little early to tell. It's just a little early to tell. Might need more time, but either way, unlike NQ, which set a pretty clear weekly lower high, this basically is a double top. And so you could look at that as a negative, like, oh, we're double topping and rolling over. But true tops in markets aren't really set with double tops. They're typically set with a peak an excess high, as you might call it, where you exhaust all the buyers, and that results in a downturn. So that's not what we're seeing here. That's not what we're seeing here. This is range trading. So I would be interested to see what happens over the coming days and weeks as we get towards the end of the year. Again, just like NQ, we did have a bunch of low liquidity days in here. Finally got a bit of movement here towards the end of the week, but this is typical of end of the year stuff, is like just lower volume trading, people on vacation. There's gonna be more and more of that as this week goes on, this next week. So should be an interesting week next week, and we'll get to see, do we get follow through to the downside on the QQQ to set a weekly or daily, possibly both weekly and daily higher low, or do we just push lower on Qs, or do we just rally up from here? Like it's kind of hard to tell when everything has been so choppy lately, but I do like that we had a definitive low close. It's just not exactly a beautiful higher low like I would want on NQ, and we're just range trading here on ES. So like even if we come lower from here, I think this is a totally healthy chart. I look at this, if this was just some non-ES name, some standard individual stock, I'd be like, "Ooh, cool, I'd love to buy it down here." I would love to buy it down here. And so that's how I'm thinking about these charts. I hope that makes sense. I hope this new approach is fun and interesting for y'all. I really do this every day, where I drill down and I try to figure out what's the most likely scenario. And it really helps me to formulate my plan for the day. So for example, I'm going to pretend that it's Monday morning right now. So for my closing thing here, I'm going to say it's Monday morning. I'm going to look at ES, and I'm going to look at NQ and pretend that where things are right now is as they will be on Monday morning, and what would I be looking for. Okay, so daily time frame, we got this megaphone pattern here happening on ES, and we've got this giant range we're trading in. Let's go to the 4 hour and see what it looks like. There's that megaphone. It's wicks on the bottom. So I'm not convinced that we're going to have continued downside, but let's see. Let's go down a little bit lower time frame, hourly. We do have an hourly lower high, and hourly EMA 12 is rejecting it, but this is a tightening range. So we had a low, lower high, higher low, and tightening range. So it's not going to be telling me a lot right now, to be honest, but let's just keep going down. 15-minute time frame. Okay, we have a 15-minute downtrend with a lower high, but the retracement is enough from, here was our move. The retracement was enough that I could just eyeball this and know that we're like well above the 618. So from here, I'd say that there's a good likelihood we're going to get a 15-minute higher low. So that's what I'd be looking for here on this time frame, is do we get a 15-minute higher low, or do we even just continue up from here and break this high, and make it even more room for the next subsequent 50-minute higher low. So that's what I'd be looking for there. And I don't even need to go any deeper than that. That's because we're in this sort of choppy area. If I go deeper than that, it's just probably going to confuse me. But 50-minute, that's what I'm looking for. Hourly, it's a tightening range. So if that 15-minute trend change got underway, I'd want to see, like, all we're ever doing with price is testing liquidity, right? So if this thing tries to push up and it cannot get to this hourly lower high, that's bearish, and you have to expect a turnaround. And like, so if this 15-minute trend change happens, but it doesn't break that high, then you're looking for the tightening range to continue, or for the downtrend to continue. So that's that. Let's go to NQ. And we'll go to the daily again. All right, so we have a potential daily higher low, right? I'll get rid of all my drawings here. Potential daily higher low. Let's go to the 4 hour. 4 hour downtrend, pretty solid now. We have a potential 4 hour bottom. 1 hour. Yeah, just like ES, we have an hourly lower high. So we're still scouting an hourly lower low from here. Unlike ES, this looks like less of a tightening range and more of a downtrend. Let me just jump over to ES just to make sure I'm not lying to you. Yeah, and why do I think that? It's because of this long wick here. Like technically, we're still stair-stepping down. But this bounce here tells me that, more likely we're going to get a tightening range. This long wick right here on this candle. And so on NQ, there is a long wick, but it's just weaker. You can just tell it's holding closer to this low than ES was. So relative weakness, right? And that's that. Let's look at the 15-minute time frame. 15-minute downtrend yeah, you know, like on the other one, we had a 15-minute tightening range with the potential to break to the upside. This is a 15-minute downtrend. So again, let me just show you what I'm seeing here when I say that. High, low. I think the lower high is there. Lower low, lower high, and it's trying for a higher low. It's trying into the close here, but it doesn't have it yet. And so you can see it's trying to do a turnaround, but this is not the kind of bounce that like you want to hold on to. Like for me, I closed out my trade because for two reasons. One, this bounce is not showing me the strength I wanted to see. It can absolutely open higher, but this weakness, and also the fact that when I bought this bounce, it had not gotten to weekly EMA 12. It had not gotten 4-hour oversold. It did not get into that zone that I thought made sense to buy. And so there's a potential it just keeps going down a little bit deeper. And I didn't want to hold over a weekend where news can come out and we could open, you know, in a completely different spot on Monday. So, but yeah, under the exercise that this is what it looks like on Monday morning, I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, we already have a 15-minute lower high. I need to see if this 15-minute lower high breaks on the open. And if it does, you know, is it going to test here? Is it going to reject there? Because there's like a little bit of a double top here. And I'm looking to see, like, can this move get legs to continue up or not? So, and I figured these are the levels we're looking at. Like, if it can get through this and then it can get through this, obviously the next thing it's going to try to test is this. If it does that, then you're opening the door for a complete trend change and reversal from here back to the upside. If not, I'm looking for this trend to continue because the trend is your friend, and this low to get broken, this low to get broken, and down we go. So technically scouting a 15-minute lower low right now for the trend to continue. All right, I'm going to stop right there. I hope this is helpful. You know, this is what I'm doing every single day as I'm trying to figure out what trades to get involved with. I'm trying to be way, way, way more selective in my trades and really, really, really just focus on you know, smaller time frame trades like the one I showed you here on NQ, or it was on QQQ, where I was on the 2-minute, and I'm down here making this trade on the 2-minute time frame, but with the goal of catching a daily or weekly higher low. You know, like the reason I was interested in this trade is because I know that that is the most likely scenario on a higher time frame, and so I'm trying to find a place on a smaller time frame to get involved in a stock that's making a higher time frame move. All right, I'm going to stop there. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and happy trading. If you like my indicators on TradingView and you like the content I'm producing here on this channel, please remember to like and subscribe.